On Fox 8 Sports, this is the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
Happy Labor Day and happy day off for many of you. Welcome to the Black and Gold Review Show. Deuce McAllister, Sean Vazan, I'm Juan Kincaid. 1 week from tonight, the Saints, the game will count for the Red, Black, and Gold. Finally.
They will finally count. I think you're excited about it. You know, I know as far as these guys are concerned, they are ready to go out and play. And I know from a fan's perspective, they're ready to go out and see them play.
There's only so much you can talk about the preseason practices, preseason games where that don't count, roster fluctuation, roster projection. Now we're here. Let's get ready to roll.
Let's get ready to roll. Let's get you right to the headlines. A lot to talk about tonight as usual. Headline number one, Alonso in. Is anyone out? Veteran linebacker Kiko Alonso has been brought into the fold, which signals there are some health issues within the Saints linebacking core. Sean Payton said that Alex Anzalone should be able to go this week. Craig Robertson, more day-to-day. What does this signing of Kiko Alonso signal to you guys?
I don't think it really says that someone's out as far as the linebackers are concerned. I think, you know, for this organization, it was an opportunity just to pick up a good player. I mean, when you look at what Vince Beagle brought, he was a good player, but he helped you mainly on special teams. I think he was more developing as a linebacker, particularly when you talk about the core guys. Now, the linebackers the last couple of weeks have been banged up when you talk about Alex and obviously Craig, but I don't think bringing him in signifies that, you know, one of those guys are going to miss significant time.
Yeah, I just think this kind of fell in their lap a little bit. It looked like Miami was trying to unload him. They only wanted Vince Beagle, who was a special teams guy. He's a proven starter. Judging by what Sean Payton said today, looks like Alex Anzalone is going to be back. We'll see with Craig Robertson. So I just think it was, hey, you want Vince Beagle for Kiko Alonso? Yeah, sure, we'll do it. And it's a quality football player playing for his first stable organization of his career. It was Buffalo, then the back end of the Philly years with Chip Kelly, then Miami, which has been in constant flux with their culture. So he's in a good organization, so why not?
And then he plays all three positions as far as linebackers are concerned. He can play the Mike, Sam, and the Wheel.
Headline number two, cornerback confidence. Marshawn Lattimore and Eli Apple are your established starters on the ends. They kept P.J. Williams and Patrick Robinson as the nickel guys. Ken Crawley's still here, struggled recently, but saw enough to warrant bringing him back. Why do you think that is?
I think, you know, you can never have too many corners when you look at it, particularly in this NFL as far as passing league is concerned. You know, I think it starts with Marshawn and Eli, and both of those guys are capable of being the starters. The only question becomes, what do you do if one of those guys gets nicked up? And so, you know, do you slide P.J. Williams outside? Do you go with Crawley or, you know, Justin Hardy? He's still developing as a corner. They have some options, but, you know, I think they're okay, or at least they're confident in what they have with their secondary.
And I just thought the struggles of Patrick Robinson on the outside were very real in the preseason. It concerned the coaching staff. They kept a guy like Ken Crawley, who struggled early in camp, but if you really paid attention to his practices, he got more consistent as camp went on, played pretty well in that final preseason game. That third preseason game almost had an interception. The more I think about this move, the more I like it, because he is a true outside cornerback that can back up either one of those guys, Eli Apple or Marshawn Lattimore.
Bit of an admittance that Robinson and Williams are not the guys to put on the outside, that even though Ken Crawley's gone through his struggles, he's still a better option in that position?
That's what I think. That's what I believe. I think Ken Crawley, despite his struggles last season, the demotion last season, is still a better option as basically your backup cornerback on the outside than Patrick Robinson is. Patrick Robinson is a good player on the inside, but on the outside he's been struggling.
Headline number three, defensive line shortcomings. No rankings until probably after the first quarter of the season. No David Onyemanya first game suspension because of that. Still waiting on Marcus Davenport. New pieces in the trenches. Seems like there's a lot of unknown aside from Cam Jordan on the left-hand side.
I think they're new to us, but these guys that you talk about, Malcolm Brown and you talk about Mario Edwards Jr., those guys are veterans. You know, they've been there, done that. You talk about Wes Horton. He's a veteran, been there, done it. I think one of the guys that surprised you, and he's really been in our organization, is Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's been able to come on. So I'm not too concerned when you look at, okay, Onyemata won't be there, Rankins won't be there. Yes, those guys have been here. We know what they can do. But the veteran guys that they brought in, I think they'll definitely help.
Yeah, I think Malcolm Brown in particular had a very good camp that we didn't really talk much about. I think he's going to be a nice player at that nose tackle position. I think he's an upgrade over Tyler Davison from there a year ago. I think they can survive without Rankins and Onyemata for one game. Onyemata will be back, obviously, for week 2. I think the big question, and we've had it all preseason, is when does the light bulb come on for Marcus Davenport? When does he become the player you drafted him to be? Is it soon this year? Is it mid-season? Is it later in the season? Because I think his development is huge for this defense overall.
Are we overly concerned about that, Deuce? We've been talking about it all preseason.
I think the want.
Yeah.
We want it so
Right,
bad
yeah.
for him, and I think that's really what it is.
Headline number 4, offensive unveiling, as in we think we know what this offense can do, but the preseason sample size is so small. Just one series against the Jets. Didn't see what Breeze to Cooks looks like. Didn't see what Kamara and Murray together look like in the backfield. Didn't see who'll take some of the receiving pressure off of Michael Thomas. Still a lot of unknown or not?
This is my least worried. This is the least thing I'm worried about. I'm not worried about this in the least, I should say. Let me rephrase my English there. But no, I look. We saw the first drive. They were clean. I like the offensive line. Michael Thomas is obviously Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. I know Jared Cook didn't pop in a game yet, but we saw it in practice. We saw it during the training camp. So I think this unit is going to be fine, especially early on in the season.
Keep number 9 upright, he'll get you in the right play. I mean, and that's basically what this offense has been all about. You know, you'll get a stern test against Houston, and you have to keep him upright. He will get you in the right play, and then from there, it'll be one-on-one opportunities, whether you're on the outside or you're the running back.
If you're a defensive coordinator, how do you pick your poison with this offense if everyone's going at high speed?
If everyone's going at high speed, I think that you make them drive the length of the field. I think that you try to make them make a mistake. Don't give up the big play as far as over the top, but make them have the 11, 12, 13 play drives. I think, you know, when you can allow them to be explosive and it's only 6, 7 plays, that's where you get yourself in trouble.
I would imagine most D coordinators want to take out Kamara and Thomas. Well, if that's the case, I think Jared Cook can really shine.
Headline number 5, the real McCoy. What we've have seen plenty of so far. Eric McCoy appears to be the real McCoy at center. He's handled that responsibility very well. And it seems that once they put him in with the ones early in the camp, there was no need to take him out. He's overcome the challenges of the complexities of this Saints offense, which was one thing we talked about early in the preseason. Could he do that as a rookie center?
He's still a work in progress, and he'll tell you, there's some things that he needs to get better at, but you're excited for what you've seen him have the ability to do. I'm interested to see them use him on some traps as far as movements is concerned. Him get out front and pull. We've seen him in the screen game be able to work. Now in the run game, can he get out front? Can he do some different things of that nature?
I like that he shut this competition down early. It was clear by week 2 of training camp that he was the guy. Now, in saying that, and Deuce, you know this, it gets a whole lot more detailed once the regular season starts, a lot more details when it comes to game planning specific opponents, and you got to be on your game. So there will be mistakes, but he came in, he shut down the competition right away. I think McCoy is going to be the real McCoy.
All right, coming up, it's time to dig into our Saints mailbag, and it's chock full of good questions from you, the viewer, including why Sean Payton chose to keep one player and let go another. Saints fans want to know, and we'll try and answer when the review continues in just a bit. Stay with us. Team Spirit on television can head to the Final Play app, submit a picture, just click the menu, scroll down to the Submit Your Saints Picks page, and from there, just follow directions. Tune in throughout the season to see your Who Dat passion on display.
Your Southern Quality Ford dealers. You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Review. Time to get to some of your questions submitted on the Final Play app using that final word feature. Our first question comes in asking, why did Sean Payton waive Emmanuel Butler? It should have been Keith Kirkwood. That from George and Metairie.
I think it was the body of work that Emmanuel Butler basically versus Keith Kirkwood. Keith Kirkwood, they know what they have. He was able to prove and show it last year, and then probably plays multiple positions as far as slot and both outside receivers. Not to say that Emmanuel Butler can't do that, but I think they just felt better of some of the things that he could give them.
That's what it boils down to, because Keith Kirkwood was not at camp for a large majority of the camp. We saw him in the 3rd preseason game against the Jets. That was his only action. Didn't play in the 4th preseason game. I personally thought Butler had done enough to earn that spot over Kirkwood. They went with Kirkwood. He's a known commodity. Although it wasn't like he had a huge body of work last year. It was like, like 11 games or something like that last year. But nonetheless, is what they went with. And the same with Austin Carr as well. Two guys they knew.
Our next question is a common question from Saints fans this weekend. Why did the Saints choose Dwayne Washington over Devine Ozigbo for the third running back spot?
2 words. Special teams. That's it. I mean, the guy makes special teams tackles. Hopefully he's back, recovered from his concussion in time to contribute fairly quickly here. But that's what it all came down to. He's a guy, he can't catch the ball in the backfield, but he can run. Devine Ozigbo can catch the ball in the backfield and was starting to contribute more in special teams. But look, they waived him. I have no doubt they wanted to bring him back, but look, he put some good tape out there, and guess what? He got signed, plus other teams put waiver requests in on him, so Ozigbo's going to be just fine.
Washington was your leading special team tackler up until he got hurt. And I think when you look at what he was able to do last year as well, that's exactly what it is. Now, he can give you something in the run game, and I would leave him at screens. I would leave as far as him catching the ball. It's a work in progress. Let him run some of those screens, but he can give you something as far as a runner in the run game. You know, not to say Ozigbo couldn't, but they just felt like, hey, look at our special teams across the board. We want to make sure that we're solid there, and it just made more sense to keep him.
Real quickly, would Washington have cleared waivers?
I doubt it. I think that someone would have picked him up just because of his ability as far as special teams are concerned.
Okay, our next question. The Saints have reached a medical statement with 2 players, Marcus Sherrills and Marshawn Newhouse. Can you explain what that means? That's from Bubbles. Bubbles and Old Jefferson wants to know, Sean.
Not to get too far into this because it's kind of complicated, but it's essentially they put him on IR, and then they basically bought out the contract, if you will. They reached a settlement on, okay, he was owed a certain amount while being on IR. By buying it out early, he goes free, and the Saints get off a little bit cheaper, so it just kind of cuts him loose, so to speak. And that's really as far as I can go with the knowledge of injury settlements.
Yeah, and they do have the ability to sign with another team. They can't sign back with the Saints. You know, I think there's a time period that they would have to wait if they were to sign back with the Saints, as far as the Saints bringing them back. But that's basically correct, Sean. It's basically it's an injury settlement.
Okay. All right. Still to come, the Black and Gold Review keeps on. We jump back into the mailbag with more questions from Saints fans, including one asking who will lead the Saints in sacks this season. Stay with us.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
We're continuing with your questions on the Black and Gold Review Show. Again, these are sent in by using the Final Play app, clicking on that final word feature. And this question comes from a 12-year-old. It says, I'm a 12-year-old Saint, and I would like to see Traquan Smith get more playing time. That is the only way he can become a top receiver. He already has shown that he can be trusted. From Tyler Greer here in New Orleans.
Tyler, it's a work in progress. I think he just has to continue to show that he has the confidence and then continue to earn the trust of the quarterback, Drew Brees. And so for him to become a top target, those are some of the things that he's going to have to do.
I think he's going to have a decent year. He had 28 catches last year, 5 touchdowns. With him, it's all about like seasonal endurance, if you will. He hit that wall at week 10, and he was not the same player through the playoffs. If he can kind of stretch it out and pace himself throughout the season, I think his numbers could flirt with 45, maybe 50 catches. I think he's a talent, and maybe get a little more diverse in his route tree. I think could help as well. But look, people have kind of discounted Traquan Smith. I think he can be a decent player in this offense.
Do you need a legitimate number 2 or just a bunch of other guys that can contribute 30, 35 receptions to kind of keep the defenses honest?
Well, I think one of the main things, you can't allow the safeties to be able to play cheat underneath as far as robbing coverage to take away some of the underneath throws and then not respecting the deep throw. That's really what hurt. You know, you talk about the vertical game. I think that was one of the things, the threat of nobody being able to go over the top is one of the things that hurt this offense.
Another question comes from Bobby Jones on the North Shore in Folsom. He says, do you see Marcus Davenport stepping up this year, Sean?
Well, we all hope so. I don't know. We talked about it earlier. I think the talent's there. I think his technique has to improve. I think he's got to get a little more diversity in his pass rush moves. I think I just think there's got to be an urgency. He's healthy. So we'll see. I mean, I think you draft him to be a dominant player. He's not there yet. Hopefully it happens.
I think he'll continue to grow. I think that's the one thing, right now we want him to be a 10-sack guy, and that would be outstanding if he does become that. But, I think for him to have a pretty good year, you put him in that 6 to 8 range as far as sacks are concerned. I think the Saints would be very, very pleased if he's in that number.
If he doesn't give you what Okafor gave you last year, is a step back for this defense a little bit? Makes it even more difficult for them this year?
Well, I think the one thing that Okafor was probably not necessarily the sack numbers, but the run defense.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that he's got to be able to give you, make sure that he's securing the edge. And at times he'll get caught inside in the run, like right there, guys will be able to bounce it. He's got to make sure that he is making sure nobody is getting outside of him as far as the run game is concerned.
Because Trey Hendrickson had a good preseason. That's pushing him a little bit.
And he's got a little bit of Alex Okafor to him.
Yeah.
He can play both ways, an effort player. He can play run, he can play pass. He's an effort player, can play. So that's still up in the air. And also in Davenport, think of this. If somehow you can get him to be better than Okafor, then think about how much better your defense overall can be. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. If he's worse, they could dip. But if he's better, this defense could be elite.
We've got another question about the defensive line from Pineville, Louisiana. Jake wants to know who is going to lead the team in sacks this season.
Number 94.
I'm going to go Cam Joy.
All right. He's led the team in 4 straight seasons, 12 last year. Rankins had 8, Demario Davis 5, Onyemata 4.5, Marcus Davenport 4.5. If you can get equal to that number from Cam Jordan and maybe the other guys lift up a little bit.
Well, you're probably not going to get 8 from Rankins this year. I don't think he's going to play enough games.
Well, obviously not Rankins, but like Demario and...
Maybe you can have a little bit of an uptick in Onyemata. That's tough from his spot. The guy is Davenport. We all know. The guy is Davenport. So somehow they got to get that production from somewhere.
Well, even if you don't get 8 from Rankins, if you can get from that defensive line as far as those defensive tackles are concerned, if you can get close to 10 again, then I think that's a positive for that position alone.
Okay. All right, coming up, it's time to look ahead to the Saints season opener, their Monday night matchup against the Houston Texans. We'll discuss that next. And be sure to tune in tomorrow night for Fox 8 Overtime when we'll have more Saints talk as well as look at all the big stories in South Louisiana sports this week. We'll, of course, answer your viewer questions, so keep submitting those on the Final Play app. And be sure to watch Fox 8 Overtime every Tuesday night at 10:35.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.
This time next week, the Saints will hopefully be close to wrapping up the win in the season opener against the Houston Texans, but it won't be easy. The Texans will be the first of 4 games the Saints will play against playoff teams from a year ago. Houston's gone through some recent changes offensively and defensively, thanks to a trade involving receiver Kenny Stills and Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. Still, to me, everything centers around the quarterback and the wide receiver Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins. Seems pretty simple there.
I agree. You must be able to make sure that you can control Watson as far as, I think, keeping him in the pocket. I think he is his best when he can get outside of the containment and gives the option to be able to run or pass. So if you keep him in the pocket, I think you're going to have success.
It's one of those games where if you keep him in the pocket, you don't get a sack, it's probably a win. It's one of those few times you can say that about a quarterback. Look last year in the playoffs, I thought the Colts really played that soft zone, and he struggled, had to stay in the pocket. And DeAndre Hopkins is really their guy. I mean, he is their guy. I mean, the numbers are astounding. So if you can somehow handle him, contain Deshaun Watson, you got a really good chance at winning this game.
We know rosters change as they get to the final 53 and as you go into the regular season, but this team has a new left tackle in Tunsil. They have a new number 2 receiver. They have 2 new running backs in Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson. That seems like a lot of main pieces having to change and then find that continuity in a week's time.
Yeah.
Or you talk about being able to call out a play.
Yeah.
I mean, on every play, you're almost going to have to tag it so each guy understands and knows what he's got to do. So when you talk about being loud in the Superdome, you know how tough that is going to be. So I think for the Saints, that helps out tremendously.
Catching them at the right time. I think they are.
On defense, J.J. Watt is still there. Knowing where he is at all times is the most important thing for this offense.
I think it's important, and I think one of the things that you have to be able to do is not only just be able to slow him down as a pass rusher, but you have to be able to run at him and slow him down, and it's kind of hits to the body. I think that's one of the things that you have to be able to do with he as far as in the run game and a pass rusher.
Plug in the tape from the last time they played. because he dominated.
Yeah.
They got to figure out a way to contain him. Hopefully it's just with Ramczyk, but if they got to help, so be it. You got to keep him under control.
What else concerns you about this Texans defense, if anything?
I think the different looks that they could give you, I think those can be some problems. You know, traditionally, 3-4, but they have the ability to be a 4-3. If that's the direction they go in, then, hey, look, that's easier for the Saints because that's what they see every day as far as practice is concerned. I think it's just looks that they can give you and the one-on-ones that they can create for themselves.
Want to squeeze in one more question from a viewer using the Final Play App Final Word feature. What do you think the Saints' record will be this year? From Charlie and Kenner, Sean.
I'm on the record. I am going 12 wins, 4 losses.
Okay.
12-4 NFC South champ.
Sean, I felt like earlier this was a 10-6 team. After seeing them throughout the summer and OTAs and training camp, right now I feel like 11-5. You know, they can. I feel like, hey, look, there's a swing game in there. They can get to 12-4, but I feel good about 11-5 and NFC champs as well.
I was going to say, do both of you guys feel like NFC champs as well this year? Still a bit of unknown from Atlanta, but their offensive line is going to be an issue with them. Tampa Bay, they're going to struggle. Carolina is kind of the wild card with Cam in this situation.
Yeah, I think the Saints are the most consistent. They're the most known. I think they are the team to beat in the NFC South.
I agree with you there. I mean, I think there's just too many question marks. You talk about Cam, that defense will still be good. We know that, but, it starts with he up front, and then have they given him enough as far as blocking is concerned? It's really the same thing with Atlanta. Atlanta overhauls their offensive line and still, still struggling. And so Tampa right now, I think is still a year or two away. There's some talent there, but I don't think that they're there yet.
Hard to repeat in the NFC South, but you guys think they both will. All right, be sure to subscribe to the Fox 8 Overtime podcast. For more Saints analysis on demand, you can find our podcast on fox8live.com, the Final Play and app, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's going to do it for us. For Deuce and Sean and everyone at Fox 8, thanks for watching. Our next newscast is at 4:30 in the morning. Have a great night.
This has been the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the Ford F-Series, celebrating 42 years of truck leadership.